Hey, aren't you going to help more around the house? If you're going to act like this, maybe you should just leave. I sat there, shocked by my mother-in-law's harsh words. Her cold stare felt like it was piercing through me. David has us, and we don't need you anymore. You always look so tired and don't get anything done, said my unsympathetic sister-in-law, Sara, with a dismissive tone. This is too much, David. Don't you think your mom and sister are going too far? I said, desperate. I'm doing my best. When I turned to my husband for support, he just looked down at me with a critical expression. I agree with my mom and sister, David said flatly. I'm busy with work, and it's a problem that you aren't helping with the house. Plus, I'm getting closer to the new part-time girl at work, and you're just a burden. Can you pack up and go? I was stunned by David's words and looked around at the three of them. They all seemed to be blaming me. I felt my anger rising, but I took a deep breath and said, I get it, I need some time. My in-laws, who used to rely on me, seemed to be falling apart. My name is Emma, and I'm 32 years old. I work hard both at my job and with household chores. While it's common for women to keep working after marriage, I really love my job and try my best to do well in the company I started with right after college. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, my husband David approached me with a pleading look. Emma, can you take care of this? He handed me a pile of bills and receipts. You should handle the cafe's finances properly. I smiled and replied, sorry, but I'm not good with that. I met David while he was working part-time at a cafe I often visited. After chatting a few times, we started dating, and eventually talked about getting married. Now, David owns the cafe, but even though he runs the business well, he struggles with the paperwork and always asks me to deal with the finances. As I sighed, my mother-in-law added, Emma, I'm suddenly craving Chinese food tonight. Can you wash the rice well? Also, Sara and the kids are coming this weekend, so we need to plan their meals. Sure, I'll do it. I nodded and hurried out of the house. Before we got married, I was excited about starting a life with David, but then, he suggested, my mom is lonely, why don't we all move into the big house together? So now, I live with his mother. To put it simply, she's not very good at housework. When we moved in, the house was a mess. After my father-in-law passed away, she started living off a pension, but she mostly spends it on eating out or ordering food. David seems to believe that housework is a woman's job, so it's all up to me. David's sister, Sara, occasionally brings her kids over, and every time she does, my to-do list grows. I can't help but think that another hectic weekend is coming. Weekends, which should be times to rest from the busy week, turn into moments when Sara's kids ask to play or complain about being hungry. I find myself not only cooking meals but also entertaining them. Then, Sara drops a bombshell. Emma, I'm getting divorced, and we'll be moving back in with you next month. I'm shocked, and for a moment, I don't know what to say. Really? I ask, surprised. Is there something you want to talk about? No, just thinking, it must have been tough. When are you moving in? She asks. I want to move in as soon as possible, she replies. I'm surprised that Sara and her kids are moving in, but I hope she will help around the house, and maybe chores will get easier. While we've had a normal relationship, I think that living together might bring us closer, and maybe she'll pitch in. But reality is different, maybe because she grew up with my mother-in-law. Sara doesn't seem to know how to do any housework. She spends most of her time lounging on the couch, watching TV, and snacking all day. Watching her, I realize that her lack of interest in housework might have contributed to her divorce. Now, with the added responsibility of cooking for her kids and making lunches for kindergarten, my workload grows, and my free time shrinks. I had hoped for help, but it's disappointing that I've received none. Then, my work at the company gets really busy. I start early, do overtime, and come home exhausted, only to find the house is a mess with no space to move. Seeing this every day, I feel overwhelmed. On top of that, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law complain, asking if dinner is ready or why I'm home so late. When I can't keep up with the housework, they coldly say, Emma, there's a huge pile of laundry waiting. Don't just relax because you're busy. I want to protest. Mom, I'm really trying my best, but I usually keep quiet before Sara can say anything. Emma, are you standing up to your mother-in-law? That's bold, but for the kids' sake, please try a little harder to make homemade meals, suggested Sara. I couldn't help but respond, if you have so much free time at home, why don't you help out once in a while? While doing chores, I overheard David's sister, Sara, saying, haha, David owns a shop, so Emma doesn't need to work, right? If that's true, maybe you should try a little harder at home. Behind their words, I felt the growing pressure that I wasn't doing enough. That night, at the height of my stress, I decided it was time to speak up to David. I've been so busy lately, and neither your mom nor your sister is helping out with the chores. It's really hard. Emma, you're not talking bad about our family, are you? David's eyes narrowed, and I braced myself. That's not what I mean. but it's hard for me to do everything on my own. If you helped out a little, it would make things easier for me. I'm busy running the shop. It's not like a regular job. Housework is the wife's job, right? Although I was disappointed by his answer, I sat quietly and thought for a moment. Suddenly, an idea popped into my head, and I quietly celebrated in my mind. I quickly grabbed my phone, went to my favorite online store, and started adding things to my cart. Once I finished, I placed the order and went to bed feeling satisfied. A few days later, my new household appliances, which I'd been dreaming about, arrived at our house: a new washing machine, a cleaning robot that reached every corner, and a rice cooker that made perfect rice without much effort. These items would make my life just a little easier and a lot more enjoyable. As I was setting up the washing machine, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law appeared, looking surprised. "Wait, Emma, you got such an expensive washing machine? The old one worked just fine, didn't it?" I smiled gently and replied, "The old one took too long, and I heard this one speeds things up." Their eyes then moved to the cleaning robot and the new kitchen gadgets. "See, I upgraded these, too," I said, showing them off. "All of these, cleaning robots and easy-to-use cooking appliances." "Emma, come here for a second," my mother-in-law called from the other room. I couldn't help but smirk to myself as I saw the surprised looks on both of their faces. David sat next to me, and the four of us started talking. "Why did you buy so many things?" My mother-in-law raised her voice. "Do you really need all these new gadgets? Wasn't the old stuff good enough?" "Well, I thought it might help make things run a little more smoothly around here," I answered. I responded with a slightly troubled expression, but my mother-in-law interrupted. "Relying too much on machines, aren't we?" Sara waved her hand dismissively, but I replied, "The old appliances still work. David is working hard managing his shop. Maybe you should be more careful with spending." David nodded in agreement with his sister, and I murmured quietly, "Maybe you're right." I saw anger in my mother-in-law's eyes, and I stumbled over my words. "Are you even thinking about our home?" she asked. "I am, but I'm just really tired," I answered. My mother-in-law raised her voice. "Enough, I can't believe you're our daughter-in-law." Sara, looking disgusted, added, "I'll take care of David. We don't need someone like you here." When I looked at David, he coldly said, "I agree with Mom and Sara. It's hard to have a wife who doesn't help with the housework." Looking at David's face, my heart sank. He continued with a cold smile, "I run my own business, so I decide how to spend my money, but being with someone who buys everything might be a problem." I was shaken by his words, but I looked into his eyes and counted to 10. Then he added with a cruel tone, "Also, I've noticed things are going well with that new part-time girl. She's more attractive than you. Maybe it's time for you to pack up and find somewhere else to live." A fire of anger rose in me, but I didn't speak out. Taking a step back to calm myself, I took a deep breath and said, "Okay, I'll look for a new place. It's probably for the best." "Finally, you understand. I'll feel much better without you around," he said smugly. That night, David signed the divorce papers, and I moved into a small rental apartment nearby with just the basics and the divorce papers. No one tried to stop me when I left. Did they ever really care about me? After submitting the divorce papers at the city office, I found a stylish apartment to start fresh. During this time, an unexpected opportunity came my way, a promotion I had been holding off on because of my family situation. I grabbed this chance and started working as a section manager. Every day, as I threw myself into my job, I felt a new sense of pride. Amidst the busy days, my phone rang. The caller ID showed it was my former mother-in-law. I thought we had nothing to do with each other anymore, right? Without checking her message, I swiped to dismiss the call. My new life had begun, and I wasn't going to look back. A year passed. One weekend, as I was relaxing in my room listening to music, my phone rang again. To my surprise, it was my former mother-in-law. Wondering what she wanted after all this time, I picked up. "Hello, is something wrong, Emma?" I finally got through. "I didn't think you'd answer after so many attempts." "Well, it's been a while. What's up?" I asked. She hesitated and then asked, "How's your new life?" Despite her probing tone, I cheerfully replied, "It's great. I love my new place, and work is going well. I even got promoted and am living freely." "That's good, Emma. Can you come back home?" I was taken aback and blurted out, "Why?" "We're struggling financially," she replied. I thought to myself, I knew it, and cautiously answered, "David's cafe only brings in about $1,000 a month, right? If no one else in the family works, that must be tough." "Yes," she said, "David's cafe hasn't been doing well. I knew about its financial situation since I handled all the accounts, but he always acted like the business was successful without understanding the real numbers. It was almost laughable how clueless he was." "I took care of all the finances and ordering, so I knew what was going on," I replied. "You knew and didn't tell us? We had no idea you were doing so well at that big company or that you were covering household expenses." My former mother-in-law exclaimed. I admitted, yes, I contributed more than $3,000 a month. That's how you managed. The truth was, I used my salary to cover the losses from David's business. He had no idea about the struggle, and once I left, it seemed like reality hit hard. Emma, can you please come back? She asked. Curious, I asked, so, how's David's cafe doing now? She sighed, we might have to close soon. The part-time workers keep quitting. With an inward smile, I said, it's tough to keep it going, isn't it? His pride isn't helping, not doing the real work. I mean, how many women would want to support a guy like that? My former mother-in-law was momentarily speechless. I continued, slightly sarcastic. Anyway, I'm a bit busy now. Since you left, the house is a mess. It's chaotic with things everywhere, she said. Confused, I asked, what do you mean? She described the disarray of their home, everything scattered around like a storage room, without anyone cooking. They were eating out, which was costing them a lot. The washing machine broke down, and there wasn't money to replace it. Actually, the appliances you took, those were a big help, my former mother-in-law admitted. Puzzled, I asked, huh? Why is that? Those appliances were for my convenience. Besides, I bought them myself, so it's fine for me to take them back, right? She reluctantly agreed. Yeah, I guess so, but I never realized housework was this hard. With a firm tone, my former mother-in-law added, with 3 adults in the house, how can it be so tough? What are David and Mia doing? A hint of exhaustion was clear in her voice. As for David, his staff has been quitting, and sales are way down. When he found out, he got really depressed and just stayed home, doing nothing. But David used to spend money freely from the cafe, didn't he? Exactly, and Mia doesn't help at all. She doesn't do anything at home, and still gets her allowance from me. Honestly, living on just my pension for the 3 of us is really tough, she continued. I replied with some sarcasm. Mia once told me I wasn't needed because she was around. My former mother-in-law pleaded, Emma, we're really struggling. Living off my pension for the 3 of us is tough. I firmly responded, I don't want to go back to that house. It must be hard to live with all that baggage. She seemed speechless. I almost felt sorry for her, but as I was about to hang up, she seemed desperate to say something. Emma, I'm really sorry, can you reconsider? Her voice sounded exhausted. I replied, do you think we could ever live together and be happy again? Huh? Was it that difficult without me? I asked, surprised but calm. After a brief pause, my former mother-in-law sighed deeply. Yes, there's actually an issue with the property taxes. We might have to sell the house. I said, I understand, but I really don't want to get involved anymore. You need to figure things out with your family. I hung up before she could say more and made sure to block her number. Holding my favorite mug filled with aromatic coffee, I sat in my room enjoying the quiet and looking out the window. A smile naturally appeared on my face. A few months later, while passing by the cafe where David used to work, I noticed it was now quiet and empty. I felt a little nostalgic as I remembered its lively past. It seemed they really did close down the cafe. Walking through the old neighborhood, I was curious about my former in-law's house and saw a "sold" sign in front. Coincidentally, I ran into an old neighbor in town. She told me that they had sold the house and moved to a small apartment nearby. Apparently, their new place was always full of loud arguments and the smell of garbage. The neighbors had complained, and it had become the talk of the town. I thought to myself, it must be tough for them, but life can change with effort. I wondered why they didn't try harder. Staring at the old house, my mind wandered through those thoughts. A lot had happened since then, but I was living each day to the fullest. In fact, a handsome guy from my workplace had confessed his feelings, saying, I really admire your hardworking nature. Now, we're enjoying our dates, and I'm excited about what the future holds. If I get married again, I really want to be happy. I feel hopeful about it now.